Well, wouldn't you fucking know? Another year we sit here at the end of an NBA season, and it's another year that the Bulls have missed the damn playoffs. Playoffs? Are you kidding me? Playoffs? And it's interesting. Like, the definition of insanity is to continue to do the same thing over and over and over again and expect the results to be any different. Well, it's not like the Bulls necessarily did that. So they weren't insane in their thinking, but it is also fascinating to me, as much as we crap on the Gar-Pax era, especially the last few years of it, as we should, as all Bulls fans should, it's a keen reminder of the fact that you could take more than one approach. You could take divergent paths and journeys to ultimately reach the same stupid-ass repetitive destination. See American politics. GOP goes this way. Fucking Democrats go this way. They all converge and we all get fucked. When you talk about the Bulls, like heading into this season, I was fully expecting this team to not make the playoffs. I'm like, they're probably a year away from really trying to make any moves. They're probably a year away. Like, this is about Zach LaVine's going to get a shit ton of shots and maybe he can make an all-star team. You're worried a lot about the development of the younger players, like the Kobe Whites and the Wendell Carter Jr.'s and the Lauri Markkanens. Like, you want to see what these guys can develop into, especially with Lowry in a contract year, and you're trying to figure out, like, Kobe White, can he be that point guard of the future? Is he more of like a Ben Gordon, Lou Williams type of combo guard? Like, what's Wendell Carter going to be? Is he going to be a legit big that you can build your team around, or is he just going to be more of a dick tease and more of a disappointment as much as anything else? But I thought you would go through the season, you'd have flashes and moments where Billy Donovan was getting the most out of him, and to be fair to Coach Donovan, I thought you saw that at different points in times in the season, but expected that this team would likely be maybe hovering around it at most, but mostly at the end of the day, outside of the playoffs. And if that's what had happened, like, maybe I'd be coming down here and raging and bitching about the fact that they didn't tank hard enough, they didn't suck enough to get themselves into a premium spot in the draft to get a potentially premium franchise-changing player, if there's even one available in this year's draft. But instead, as you go through the season, something happened. You get the big kind of like climate-changing trade for the Bulls where they go get Vooch from the Magic and they get rid of Wendell Carter Jr. and they get rid of Otto Porter, Pizza Porter, and his fucking expiring contract. You bring in a second All-Star to play with your All-Star and Zach LaVine, and, you know, a lot of Bulls fans are like, oh boy! Fuck that first-round pick in 2021 and 2023, especially the 2021 one, because they had gotten to the point where that pick wasn't going to be that good anyway, so that's a throwaway. In 2023, you'd hope by then they're not going to be in the same damn position. They bring in a chance to get a fucking second All-Star in the team, a legit 2010-plus big man with a couple of years left on his contract at a less than prohibitive number. It's not like you're paying him $40 million a year or anything. And he's in the peak of his career, his prime physical condition and all of that. And then they make other moves. You know, they're bringing in the Troy Brown Jr.'s, Devontae Greens, and they're bringing in Daniel Tice. And you're looking at this remade Bulls team and you're saying, hey, you know what? This is a team that's already in the playoff mix. They're hovering around in that range where they could at least be in play-in game tournament. You know, maybe now to get this team to gel and you get some chemistry, and all of a sudden you're talking about this team going from somewhere between 7 and 10 to maybe they're a 4, 5, or 6 seed in the Eastern Conference. And yeah, all of that shit didn't happen. All that change and all that roster turnover and all that other bullshit for the Bulls to end up in the same damn spot again this year on the outside looking in on the playoffs. Whoopee! And this is not necessarily about being mad that the Bulls missed the playoffs. This is more about the fact of me trying to understand, like, what's the real reason for optimism or positivity here? Like, you can make excuses about late in the season, losing LaVine, your all-star, your top scorer for 2 weeks due to protocols. You know, it didn't help. It certainly didn't. But other teams have had to deal with other injuries and other things. They still find a way to get it fucking done. And this Bulls team just didn't find a way to get it done. And you say, well, great, bring Vooch in, helps on the offensive side of the ball, and he helps on the glass, but He ain't really helping on the defensive side, and that's still a massive problem for this team. And you just look at it and you say, okay, there were a lot of folks that were starting to drink the AK and Eversley Kool-Aid. Why? Like all that talk of hope and optimism and looking forward to the future. Like, I'll admit it, I even got caught up in it just a little bit in terms of like, hey, the Vucevic trade is a first step, but it is only a first step. And there are still concerns and there's still a lot of work to be done on this ball club. A lot of work to be done on this ball club. And there were those of you that were getting caught up in thinking like, hey, this team's going to make some noise in the playoffs. And that shit didn't happen. And I just wonder, like, at what point in time do you stop giving AK the benefit of the doubt that he frankly hasn't earned, merited, or deserved in Chicago? At what point in time do you sit there and look at this Bulls front office and say, okay, you made a move, and early on it hasn't worked. And part of the problem also was that you didn't go get a point guard that you knew you fucking needed. You had other pieces that you didn't plug. Like, what are you going to do next? Like, where do you get the confidence in this almost naiveness to think that this front office knows what the hell they're doing? Where? Answer me. You're hoping, you're wishing, you're praying, but that doesn't speak it into existence. Like, if anything, I'm more mortified by the Bulls' ultimate result this year than I was maybe the last couple of years, because at least then I expected them to suck. And I expected them to be stupid enough in some seasons to win just enough games where they end up picking 7th. And that's exactly what the fuck they did. At least this past draft, they were picking 4th. But even then, when you talk about the optimism, oh, they got Patrick Williams and his athletic upside. Okay, so what? They got a role player with the 4th overall pick. And maybe it wasn't a draft loaded with future stars and superstars, I'll grant you that. But what was so special about Patrick Williams in a draft full of 3-and-D wing players that you had to fucking take him 4th overall? Just imagine if the purported deal you had heard before the draft where the Bulls would have traded Wendell Carter and the 4th pick to Golden State for the 2nd pick, and then the Bulls would have come to their fucking senses and drafted LaMelo Ball instead of what they would have inevitably done, like dumb dicks, and draft James Wiseman. Like, imagine how different the whole trajectory of this organization would be right now. Like, sometimes it's the moves that you don't make, and you say, well, maybe Golden State didn't want to trade out of that position. You know what? You fucking put enough pressure on them, and you have to have the vision to be able to say, hey, we could shed another piece here in order to make this deal happen because we know this young man could potentially be a franchise-changing type of prospect. And now you talk about, you could have had a LaMelo, you could have had a Levine, and then you still would have had the capabilities to make the fucking trade with the Magic for Vucevic. You could have still gotten that done, and look at how different the organization is now. But you drafted a role player with a top 5 pick. You hired a head coach in Billy Donovan, who was solid, but certainly didn't produce much or provide much in terms of improvements on the defensive end of the court for this Bulls team. There was a little bit maybe of development with Kobe White, but not much. I certainly didn't see that much that leaves you to say, okay, some of you are going to say, oh, he developed some this year, and he averaged over 15 a game. Well, that doesn't mean shit in today's NBA. A lot of these dudes can average 15 a game if they're given enough shots and enough opportunities because nobody fucking defends anymore and everybody shoots the damn 3. So, of course, a shit ton more role players are going to average 15 a game. That doesn't mean like what it used to. 15 points a game now is like scoring 8 or 9 points a game as a role player 20 years ago. Context matters. But now you're a Bulls team that goes into the offseason. You'll have some cap space where you can make some moves. But who's going to be out there in the open market? Who's going to be available for you to go out and get that's really going to fundamentally change this team? Now you're also talking about you got to hope to God because you gave up this protected first-round pick to Orlando. You got to hope it's in the top 4, isn't it? Otherwise it goes to Orlando. So now you're hoping the ping pong balls fall right. So you might not have a first-round pick to play with in the 2021 draft. You look at the other pieces, you're probably letting Lowry walk. I certainly would hope the fuck you are. Because what does he bring to the table for you long term? Oh, guess what? That's right. Another year of not making the damn playoffs. Like, what the fuck are you getting out of Kobe White? Like, there's just so many things I could look at with this team, and I say, they have some cap space, but now you're going to be going into Levine's last year under his previous contract, and you say, okay, are you going to be able to even keep him long term? Is he going to want to sign for max money in Chicago? Or is he going to say after next season that he wants to fuck out? Are you potentially going to have to think about trading him? So you got challenges there. And you look at, okay, you got Vucevic. He's going to be there for the next couple of seasons, but who the hell else are you going to bring in around him? Who the hell else are you going to sit there and put around these guys? Like, it even fundamentally comes down to the problem of LaVine is not a true number one, and people need to stop that crap. He's a number one by default because he's the best option the Bulls have. That doesn't make him a true, real deal top number one option in the league. He's more of a good 2 or a great 3 option in terms of scoring priorities. And if you think you're building a championship team around Zach LaVine as your top option, I got fucking news for you. It ain't happening. And you're even stretching it a little bit with Vucevic as your number 2 option. You could maybe get away with that if you've got a more legit number 1, but the Bulls don't. They've got LaVine. And you think I'm trashing LaVine. Hey, LaVine is a fucking all-star. Regardless of circumstance or situation. There are only but so many guys in the league today and throughout the history of the NBA that could ever proclaim themselves to be an all-star, and Zach LaVine is one of them. He deserves props, but we have to have the realistic conversations here. LaVine is not a true number 1. I would debate whether Vooch is even really truly a number 2. You don't have a number 3 guy. Oh, you can say Patrick Williams. Man, are you fucking hoping, wishing, and praying. You're going to say Kobe White? Well, you know his role has to be limited for him to be at his best. I'm not going with Kobe White as my 3rd best player, pretty much like the Bulls did the last couple months of the season, and expecting things to fucking go out well. And if you want to say, well, their 3rd best player might have been Thaddeus Young. Okay, well, then that's part of the problem. This great bench and role player, Thaddeus Johnson, Thaddeus Young, in his fucking mid-30s, might be your 3rd best player. That's a problem here. So the Bulls have holes all over their damn roster. They've got top players that are misaligned in terms of their natural best fits in terms of, ownership and prioritization and roles of what they do within the offense. This team still can't fucking defend. They lack draft pick capital. They have some cap space, or they're not going to have an overwhelming amount of cap space. Like, please tell me how this is going to get any better. As far as I'm concerned, they just took a different path to the same disastrous results. And until proven otherwise, people should not give this front office a break. People should not sit there and project all this calm and confidence and optimism on a front office that I look at their results this year and say, what the fuck was so different or special compared to Garpax? I might bother you fundamentally. Remove the emotion of Garpax for a second and tell me honestly, what the hell is so fundamentally different here? They had 2 all-star players they have in the fold for the last couple of months, and they managed to make the playoffs when 2/3 of the goddamn league makes them every year. It's another wasted Bulls season with no real reason, credibly, for optimism at this point. Stop kidding yourselves. And stop giving benefit of the doubt and assuming positive intent for an organization that, until proven otherwise, doesn't merit it and doesn't freaking deserve it.